what is ABM and how do you see ABM today?
I guess, first of all, you have to understand that I guess all the marketing organizations are doing ABM in some shape or the form, right? It's just that they don't know that they're doing ABM, right? So, and frankly, if you have to broadly divide ABM, you can call it like two types of ABM. One is the enterprise ABM and one is the growth ABM. When you talk about the SaaS environment, the startups, right? They don't have time to 6 to 9 months to implement their ABM program, because you know how startups work. They need to quickly implement things, get results, and move on. Whereas when you compare it to the likes of large enterprise deals where you have a deal size of 5 million, 10 million, $20 million, right? There you can have a 12 to 18-month program specifically on one account where you have so many resources. I mean, the IT companies with resources as high as 4 lakh, 3 lakh, I mean, they have ample resources to implement those programs. So their ABM might be very different from this ABM, but ultimately they're all doing the same thing. And I guess in a simpler form, I just like to define what ABM is for me. Probably there might be some other definitions available on the internet. But what I feel is that ABM is just that concentrated efforts that you have on your focus accounts and leveraging the best of your marketing abilities within the organization, right?
Welcome to Ads and Tales, the podcast where we explore tales from the world of B2B ads. This is your host Sid, and I will bring you the insights, experiences, and strategies from those who have been in the trenches to help you excel in your marketing efforts. So sit back, relax, and join us for some great tales from the world of B2B ads. This is Ads and Tales. Episode 1, and I could hear the roll, camera, action across when the editor was doing this. So I was feeling very surreal about Bollywood and Hollywood types. But we are doing something better. We're talking B2B marketing. And again, as I said, it is a surreal feeling. And I cannot have had a better guest on the first episode of this thing. Aashish Gambhir, welcome to Ads and Tales.
Thank you, Sid. Thanks for having me here.
So Aashish and I go back a long way. We met when we were doing our MBA together, and he has always come across as a person who went deep in whatever he was doing. Whether it was doing sales in Rajasthan, I think back 4 or 5 years back, or now when he's managing product at Provana, I think he's still doing a stellar job. So that is how I've looked up to him. That going deep in whatever you do rather than going broad, and that is one of the learnings I've picked up, and therefore I feel honored to have him as the first guest for Ads and Tales. And I'll let him speak now and let him introduce himself with a prelude question, which says, what did you do to go from those fields in Bhatinda to becoming the product marketer that you are today?
So, first of all, thank you, Sid, for having me. When you spoke about our MBA days, it, kind of just, all those memories came flashing by, all those, late night outs, Maggie hangouts. So really, I mean, that was, and I can't believe that it has been 7 years, right? I mean, we started in 14, completed in 16, and it has been 7 years that, we have been still. So if you count 2 years from MBA as well, that makes it 9, right? And I think that's a good number of years for us to know each other, and then kind of thank you for giving me that the praise and the that you just mentioned at the start. But I guess I've always considered you as a better marketer than me, so probably I'll just learn few things from here, right? And in this next 30 minutes, I expect. I mean, obviously, I will be speaking about, product marketing, B2B marketing in general, but I guess I'll also get to learn from you a lot. So, just to, kick off, I'll just introduce myself. So, I'm currently working as product marketing manager at Provana. I'm managing, one of the products, right? So all the marketing around that product, I do that. It has been close to 9 to 10 years in the industry, and you reminded me of another thing, right? Bhatinda airfield. So that was the start of the journey, right? So that was where, I kind of entered the corporate world, straight after doing BTech and, first job, and nothing about. So, it reminds me of saying, nothing Jon Snow. I mean, I was kind of that person, right? I knew nothing about corporate life. I knew nothing about B2B. And that was my first experience in the B2B world, right? Where I, so I was not in a marketing role there. I was doing project engineering, project management, but I guess that gave me a glimpse of what client expectations look like. I learned the nuances of operational agility, execution capabilities, seeing it from the lens of operations person. So one thing that I've always maintained is that marketing is just not, doing MBA in marketing and, implementing some campaign or something. I think for a marketer, you have to understand the perspective of each person, right? And when I look back, I kind of reflect on those learnings, and then I still believe that those learnings have come in handy at this moment, right? So started with that first job, worked there for around 2.5 years, from 11 to 14, and then post that I joined SM in Pune for masters in marketing management, and that is where the journey actually started. In between, I had one role as a B2C sales, which I really did not like, right? So I took the plunge and shifted towards the B2B world again, but this time not in the operations world, but in the GTM segment, right? In solutions, GTM, and there I learned the intricate traits of services marketing. Spent there around 4 or 5 years in Wipro, where I got to know about ABM. How does enterprise ABM works? How do you bag large deals? So that was one of the things that I learned there. And then post that, I always wanted to work in a B2B SaaS environment, because as a marketer or as a person in your career, you have to take pivot every now and then. So I realized that this was a point wherein I had to pivot myself from services marketing for a GTM person to a product marketing or somewhere in B2B SaaS environment. And that is where I joined Metal as senior manager product marketing, wherein I worked on ABM and customer marketing. I worked there for around a year, and post that I've been working in Pravana as product marketing manager and kind of enjoying my role here. So basically, I'm leveraging all my past experience here, and learning new things as well, because if I'm always a believer of you have to learn new things as you go along. So this role is kind of giving me that exposure. So that is where I am, from Bhatinda to.
Awesome. So one thing you mentioned was ABM, and ABM was a very service or consulting oriented thing, let's say 3-4 years back. And it has now transformed into a B2B SaaS thing, which I've also noticed with a few of my clients. And my feeling is that you made that switch at just the right moment when ABM is becoming big with B2B SaaS. So, but again, one of my feelings is people still don't get what ABM actually is. It is just people know the full form. It's called account-based marketing, and let's do ABM is how I've heard it from a few clients as well. So what is ABM, and how do you see ABM today?
I guess, first of all, you have to understand that all the marketing organizations are doing ABM in some shape or the form, right? It's just that they don't know that they're doing ABM, right? Mm-hmm. So, and frankly, if you have to broadly divide ABM, you can call it like two types of ABM. One is the enterprise ABM, and one is the growth ABM. When you talk about the SaaS environment, the startups, right? They don't have time to 6 to 9 months to implement their ABM program, because how startups work. They need to quickly implement things, get results, and move on. Whereas when you compare it to the likes of large enterprise deals where you have a deal size of 5 million, 10 million, $20 million, right? There you can have a 12 to 18 month program specifically on one account where you have so many resources. I mean, the IT companies with resources as high as 4 lakh, 3 lakh, they have ample resources to implement those programs. So their ABM might be very different from this ABM, but ultimately they're all doing the same thing. And I guess in a simpler form, I'll just like to define what ABM is for me. Probably there might be some other definitions available on the internet. But what I feel is that ABM is just that concentrated efforts that you have on your focus accounts and leveraging the best of your marketing abilities within the organization, right? So if you're an ABMer, right, you have to work with everyone in your organization, right? And specifically, ABM is different for different organizations. For example, that every set of buyer sits on a different channel. For one company, you have a lot of buyers on SEO. For one company, you may have a lot of buyers in in-person events. Or for another company, referral might be one thing, right? So, buyers sit in different channels. So then how can you have an ABM which is only for one channel? It has to span across all the channels. So by definition, ABM is something when you have a set of target accounts whether it's one-to-many approach, whether it's one-to-one approach, whether it's one-to-few approach. I mean, there are different approaches available, right? But ultimately, you have to use the best of your marketing ability to target those accounts. And in terms of, how do you differentiate ABM versus demand gen, right? Because ultimately, ABM is doing demand gen, right? It is adding to your pipeline. There are other metrics that you can measure, but it is different from a regular demand gen in a sense that regular demand gen is more of a broader effort, right? You might have a SEO team and a content marketing team who is working on your content marketing funnel. Then you have a paid ads team. So they are doing a broader demand gen. Whereas in ABM, you know that these are the specific set of accounts that I'm targeting. Whether that account falls into one-to-one tactic, one-to-many tactic, one-to-few tactics, that's a different ballgame altogether. But then ABM essentially, by definition, is having concentrated efforts on a few set of accounts and then measuring your success.
Got it. So I am completely aligned with you. The one thing that I have noticed apart from this is that kind of touch points. So a lot of times what happens is, if you're targeting the CMO as an example, who is the final buyer of your product, a lot of organizations I have observed focus on that person only. Whereas the reality of at least the B2B SaaS world is there have to be multiple people that you have to convince, which can include the IT person who has to integrate your tool within the system, which can be the CFO or the finance team, which has to finally approve your costs, or the procurement team, etc. So the concept that I try to pick up is from April Dunford, who says that you have to think of the product champion. So if you are a marketing product, your product champion is the marketing manager or the CMO. If you are a HR product, it's the HR manager or CHRO. So how do you try to touch base with, let's say, the IT person is within the company, or should you focus your efforts only on the single person, which is the product champion, and let him have to convince the others? So there are both approaches.
I guess there are different roles for different people in the organization. So, I guess you're right. In a B2B buying setting, right, there is no one single person, making that buy. So your product champion or somebody who is a direct user of that product, he or she may have to kind of convince the committee, but he or she has a different role to play. Whereas the IT person has a different role to play, and a finance person has a different role to play. Now, there are different messages for these people, right? So I think where you take a transition from persona-based targeting to person-based targeting is where ABM comes into play, right? Like persona-based targeting, you have cohorts, right? You target all the IT folks of a company. Whereas in person-based targeting, now you know that, okay, this is an account that I'm targeting. I'm going to put all my efforts in here. For example, I'll just give an example. So you have a deal, right? And you know that, okay, $5 million is the average size of this deal, if it happens, right? And you know that CMO, who is the purchaser of that user of that product, is already convinced. But then there are some, comprehension. You can say not. There are some reservations around the ROI of that product, right? So that means that you need to convince the CFO or the finance team there that this is a product that they need to buy, the ROI, etc. Now, how do you do that? You can have one-to-one tactic. For example, if you have a event happening for a CFO in your city, you can probably slip an invitation to that person just outside that deal. Have your CFO or somebody from your team join in. He or she can also join in from there, and then you meet that person there. Just talk to them, build a relationship, build a rapport, and then do your one-to-one marketing there. And IT person might have some reservations about the technical feasibility of that product, the integration part, the security part, the data part. So how do you do that? Probably there is a webinar going on. You can sponsor a webinar, call that person on that webinar, be there as a speaker, right? And try and kind of build a relationship. So ultimately, ABM is all about relationship. All the things are secondary, like whatever data we provide, whatever support we provide. Ultimately, we have to target that buying committee. And you should know that, okay, this person has a role limited to that. This person has a role, limited to B, and this person can, do this much for me. Ultimately, there is one, approver, but then there are certain people who can kind of influence that decision. So you have to kind of tap everyone, and that is where the ABM comes into play. Otherwise, there is no difference between the demand gen and the ABM, right?
Yeah, and that brings me to another observation of mine, which I'll try to transform into a question. marketing as a function is always thought of to be this glamorous and hero of the organization, which is usually not the case when ABM is going on. And I try to go a level up and say that it is usually not the case in most B2B marketing as well, because it has to be more in sync with sales as compared to a B2C product. And I take my own example. I worked with, let's say, Vodafone as a marketing person and as a salesperson, and then I worked as a marketing person in a B2B organization. The kind of alignment you need in a B2C organization between sales and marketing is nowhere close when you are talking B2B, because your sales and marketing have to speak the same language. In B2C, it is usually jao becho is what we say in Hindi.
Right.
In B2B, it is much more what do you say, much more aligned or much more thought through, and therefore marketing becomes sometimes the best actor in a supporting role, and a lot of times marketers are not able to digest that fact. So how do you think about that?
I think, first thing that we have to realize here is that we all running for the same goal, right? We are all running for the same metric, pipeline, revenue. I mean, you're right that you don't get to be the hero, right? But then, as I said, right, there are, people in the organization have certain roles defined. An IT person cannot do the job of a CFO. A CFO cannot do the job of a CMO. So ultimately, we as marketers also have to, kind of realize that fact. And now that we are discussing ABM, I think ABM is a very bright example of alignment between sales and marketing, because I see ABM as a little different from the the growth and the digital marketing. The demand gen marketing, but it has to lie somewhere between sales and DG, wherein you can, get the best of both worlds and kind of, because sometimes a common complaint that salespeople have is that marketing doesn't know that what we need, right? And marketing people have the same complaints from sales that they don't know what to do. So ultimately there has to be a common ground, and I guess that common ground is ABM, right? So, as far as you are achieving the right revenue goals, the metrics, all those SLAs, keeping in line with the organization goals and objectives, I don't think so it really matters, right? Ultimately, whoever does it, whether it's somebody from ABM or somebody from, SDR team. In fact, that brings me to an example, right? How there can be misalignment in an organization. If I'm targeting 100 accounts, right, as a part of my ABM strategy, and if SDRs are not targeting those 100 accounts, how do you expect me to achieve results? Ultimately, one metric that I have to measure, to see whether the ABM programs are success or not, is that the 100 accounts that SDRs are targeting, how kind of they're the number of meetings they're getting in ABM accounts versus non-ABM accounts. Now, this is a clear example of an alignment between sales and marketing. If we are not aligned, then obviously this program will not be a success. So ultimately, they might get the meetings, they might get the order book and revenue, but at the core of your heart, that you have a role to play in that. So I guess we'll have to kind of not adjust, but that's a reality.
Yeah, and because we're talking roles, what is often misunderstood as far as the funnel is concerned within ABM, let's try and talk about that. And this funnel is, let's say, 70 to 80% similar for all demand gen campaigns. Top of funnel, these are the things that we talk about when we try and show our expertise. We call tofu, bofu, mofu. But let's try and declassify these terms. So what is the top of the funnel that you like, or you prefer to others, or anything bottom of the funnel activity? Just break it down for me.
So you're asking me to explain tofu, mofu, bofu?
Yeah, you can declassify tofu, mofu, bofu, and what is it?
I personally don't like these terms tofu, mofu, and bofu. I'm telling you, because I don't think so. I don't know. Whoever created this funnel may have some reasons to do that, but I guess in today's world, buyers are just going zigzag. One of your competitors might have created awareness and they were searching for that product and they immediately landed on your mofu, right? That doesn't mean that they're not aware about the product. So ultimately, I guess, it's like, so what do these represent exactly? These are different set of contents available within the web, on your website, or whatever third-party data that is made available to the customer at the right point of time, right? So it's not like if I am searching for a product, for example, I am looking for image, aggregators, right? And I just search on Google and I find a website. So, if I'm already aware, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to click on that and not read about it. So ultimately, so that concept, I mean, I think there's a lot of overlap in that. But for the sake of, explaining it, I'll just, try and summarize that in 10, 15 seconds. Tofu is where you kind of, generate awareness for your customers. I mean, they really don't know what are the possible, solutions available in the market, right? And that is where they start researching about the product. There you have, more of a research-based content. We try and engage the, suspect, not even prospect, suspect, right? Because you don't know whether they're a prospect or not. You have all the engaging content available, right? Then, in the mofu, in the second stage, you believe that, okay, now my customer has done some bit of research already. He or she knows what the product is all about, what the possible solutions are, and they're kind of, exploring in detail, okay, what are the, features of that product? What is it that we can, get from this solution? And there, I mean, you can have webinar videos talking about, content which is not very specific to your product, but specific to the category in general. And then you move into the next stage of funnel wherein, okay, now is a real stage wherein probably your salespeople are also engaged with the prospect. They're kind of, considering buying a solution, and they are, researching about competitors as well. And that is where I believe, for me, this is the most important part, because that is where the data from our system, like first party data or third party data, can flow into the sales system and kind of help them as well. And that is where the real buying happens. Also, it might happen that, a customer might reach bofu and then ghost your salesperson, because a lot of SDRs or salespeople, they have this complaint that, the buyer ghosted me. I mean, they were looking for a solution, all of a sudden they went back. So I guess that is how, I mean, this is the as simple way I can think of explaining these three funnels.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head that way. As to what we are trying to convey as a message, so what a lot of marketers that I have also spoken to confuse it with, how do we do these? So we do ebook. They say top of funnel is ebook, middle of the funnel is webinar, and bottom of the funnel is
case studies, success stories,
case studies, testimonials. So this is how I've heard the definition. What people don't realize is it has to be the messaging is what you're saying.
Yes.
So category awareness is your middle funnel, product awareness or product information is your bottom funnel, things like that.
And category awareness, so I'll say, so that reminds me of another thing. For example, you are fighting in a red ocean market, or you are fighting in a blue ocean market. Now in a blue ocean market where there is less competition, you have a lot of opportunities to tap. Probably you might have to sell category as a part of awareness, right? Because sometimes you have to sell your category and then your product becomes sellable. In a category where the category is already sold, right? There are 40 odd players, selling that stuff. You don't need to kind of sell category in the awareness stage. You can straight away talk about your product. So I think it depends upon the market that you're operating in and whether your strategy is differentiated strategy or disruption strategy. I mean, I think people have to understand the product. I mean, people have to understand the market that they're operating in, the kind of audience they're targeting. I mean, there is no one single rule, I would say. I mean, every market is different. So whether it's, you have to understand whether buyer knows about your product or not. If not, for example, you start selling the product where the customer is not even aware of the category, right? So they won't be able to relate to that. So ultimately, you have to first set category, then kind of sell your product. In another case, you might have, if it's a red ocean market, people already know there are 30 odd players available. Then you have to sell a differentiating factor, like what is it that differentiates you from the other players. So ultimately, the messaging and the positioning will adjust accordingly.
Yeah. And one example that I always share when we talk red ocean and blue ocean is if you're selling a CRM, you only have to talk about your product. People know what is a CRM.
Yes, exactly. Because they've been using it for 40 years, right?
Yeah, correct. And another example which category creation that I like is something like a Dream 11, who created a category and then became a leader in the category.
And now they are synonymous with their category, right?
The category itself, they are the Xerox of online gaming, whatever you
online fantasy gaming, yeah.
Online fantasy gaming. So these are the two examples that I often share with the people I speak to. But I think you put it brilliantly, and that is why I want to divert to another part of ABM, which is less spoken of, but and I don't even know if it is relevant or not. So you can throw light on that. Does it differ for product-led sales, product-led growth modules, and a sales-led growth module? Product-led growth module is when the product is good enough that it becomes viral, kind of a thing, slowly and steadily, wherein you don't need a sales support for the product to come in. Sales-led model is more where you need a sales support and a consultative sale. So does ABM differ for both? I see it more from a sales-led angle, but you can guide me on how it works on both sides.
I think so. I have had experiences of working with sales-led as well as product-led marketing or ABM, whatever you can call it. I think ultimately it all boils down to the market factors that you're operating in. And I'll go back to that blue ocean, red ocean thing. And this is based on my experience. I might be wrong as well. So what I've seen is, like, in a market where everybody is known, right? Everyone knows that, okay, these are the 10, 15 odd players. It has to be sales-led, right? Because ultimately it is better sales tactics that might win you a deal as compared to the product features. Because you're operating in a market where 90% of the features are the same. Probably you might have 10% variations here and there. But ultimately, what is it that will, make you win deals is the front end, right? It has to be sales-led. So you need better competitive intelligence. You need good use of intent data, probably good use of, third-party, ads, or, ads using third-party cookie. That's a separate topic, that what will happen in cookieless future. But then let's not digress there. So ultimately, it has to be sales-led there. Where I guess product-led ABM will help is where you need more help in positioning and messaging of a category, and that is where blue ocean market kicks in. Wherein even your salespeople, they are not really sure of what are the sales tactics that we can use in this market, because they don't know what they're buying, right? So they are selling to a buyer which they think is the right buyer, but ultimately, is it something that the buyer needs? That still needs validation, right? So how do you do that? So there you need more, concerted efforts from the product leaders, and I guess it has to be product-led ABM in that sense.
Right. So even in product, there is scope for ABM, is what I hear, wherein you can target 100, 200, 250 accounts, whichever way you go.
Ultimately, it's all product-led growth, right? We talk about PLG, right? So I guess ABM then naturally merges with the product-led growth model that we have.
Right, with a lesser role of sales person.
Yeah. So the role of sales obviously might be limited at the start, but as we gradually move from untapped market to mature market, probably in a couple of years, then probably we might have to transition from product-led to sales-led.
Got it. Fair enough. And does this change if you go up the market and down the market? And I'll explain what I mean by this. Up the market is, let us say you're selling to SMEs right now, people, organizations with 500 employees, and now you want to roll it up to organizations with 2,000 employees. Or going down market is you are selling to 1,000 employees organization and move down to 500, 200. So does the way you are doing ABM change, or does ABM in itself change? What has been your experience?
So I have not had experience with this, but I can think of something that can really influence your ABM strategy. Like if I was an ABMer, right, and I was kind of selling to organizations with around 1,000, 1,500 employees, which means that there could be a buying committee of 5 to 10 people, right, who is buying my product. And if you go towards like down the hill, right, down the market, 400 to 500 employees, then the buying committee might be restricted to 1 or 2 or probably 3 at max. So executing ABM becomes easier, because I guess then it becomes more of a persona-based marketing, right? Where okay, these are 2-3 people that we need to target. But as you go with organizations with more than 2,000, 5,000 employees, you might see that the decisions are taken by different units. For example, if you're targeting a company with 5,000 employees, they might have like 5 locations across the globe, right? And there might be one decision which is taken from the headquarters, one a regional level decision, one there could be a decision across the region, for example Asia Pacific. Then your decision centers changes, and then your ABM strategy also has to change accordingly. Because if you're targeting something for which the decision is not taken in your geography, where you cannot meet the person, where you cannot interact with them one-on-one, where you cannot call them and invite them on an event, right? Because or you can invite them into events from different country if you have a lot of budget, but then ultimately there are different decision centers, so ABM strategy changes accordingly. Then you also have to work with the regional marketing teams as well, because you need to take care of regional nuances. What is the budget that this geography has? So I guess it's the same thing, but you have to make some slight variations as well. That's what I can think of.
Rewriting the script for different things.
Yeah.
But I completely get you. And which takes me to my next question, which is not, I don't know why that is the case, but not discussed as often. When you're creating a product, you're making a marketing team. Most founders are skeptical as to who to hire, at least for the marketing side.
First
marketing hire. So a lot of times people hire the performance marketer and burn their hands. Sometimes they hire the wrong content marketer, they burn their hands. Sometimes they hire someone from a big consulting firm who has not had this kind of an experience and burn their hands. So what is your view on the first marketing hire of a product that has good potential, a B2B SaaS product?
So I think there are a couple of factors that you need to think of. So if I am the CEO of a company and I have very less, limited marketing knowledge, although I think everybody has marketing knowledge, right? Everybody has everything to offer to marketing team, but still, so I think you have to understand the condition that you're operating in. There is no fixed rule for that, I would say. First, I think probably it will make sense if you can have somebody consult you for first 3 to 6 months, right? Help you understand who your buyers are, where your market is sitting, what is it that you can do. As I said, there are different channels for different buyers, and every buyer, like for each product, it's not like you have 20% on organic, 20% on ads, 20% on events. I mean, it varies, right, according to the product. So if I have to have a first hire, I would recommend a T-shaped marketer. Now, I'll tell you what I mean by T-shaped marketer. Since I'm assuming that it's a startup, you have, obviously, limitations on budget, you want to achieve results quickly. So you need to have a first hire who has a knowledge about each and every process of marketing, right? You can say generalist, but with specialization in one field. So, and that field has to be your primary channel. So if my primary channel is SEO, I will hire somebody who has good exposure in SEO, but also has good relevant experience of working across marketing teams. So that will give me he or she will have the knowledge of executing marketing, strategies. He or she will have the network to hire people, right? He or she will have, exposure to different kind of technologies that are available these days. So you see, technology has kind of kicked in the marketing, B2B marketing especially, the use of intent data, use of programmatic ads, use of using your first party data, etc. So there are so many tools available in the market. So you need somebody who has the exposure of working on that, and plus whoever you hire first, he or she should know about every marketing process in general. So if you're hiring a performance marketer, I mean, what will he or she do, right? If there is nothing to perform, what they're going to measure, right? So that will not give you results. You need to hire somebody who can kind of work on your basic structure first and know, okay, so these are the low-hanging fruits that I can first pick. And to achieving these low-hanging fruits, to achieving the right revenue goals, I need to hire 4 or 5 people, build a core structure in first year, and then scale. You cannot have somebody who will hire 20 people on the go, and then you will be firing all cylinders here and there, and they'll not get your results, right? So ultimately, it has to be kind of a sync between your marketing, your market structure, the where you're operating, plus the experience that person that carries. So I would say a T-shaped marketer is the right bet. I don't know whether that's an industry term or not, but
a generalist with one specialization, which is
I would prefer.
Yeah, generalist with one specialization, depending upon which is the way you are taking for growth.
Exactly,
you can put it that way.
Yeah, this is what I feel. But I mean, obviously, people have their own opinions. I've seen companies like promoting head of marketing posts with just 10 employees in the company without doing any basic research on why they need a marketing person. Ultimately, I think you have to understand your objective and goals. When we talk about ABM itself, right? ABM has different goals that they can achieve. So whether it's deal acceleration, whether it's creating more pipeline, or whether it's creating more awareness, right? Ultimately, you have to understand what is my first year goal, right? If you have a right product market fit, right, and people are still adopting your product, so your marketing objectives for that year will be very different from your marketing objectives, like say 4 years down the line. So you have to hire for somebody who is a right fit for that first year itself. So that is what I think people should think when they hire the first.
Yeah, these stages of ABM are quite underrated, because I've heard business leaders come to me, my goal is $1 million in year 2. What should I do? So that is where we have to clarify sometimes that, okay, this is what will happen in first 6 months and this is what will happen in the next 6 months.
Ultimately, you have to sow the seeds and then wait for the fruits, right?
Correct. And we've, especially in B2B environment, I've seen people come back and say it's been XYZ months, there is no convert. What is happening?
And one more thing that I would like to highlight here is that, when people measure ABM, they measure ABM. If they measure ABM by number of leads, I think that's a very wrong way to do that. You cannot, because you're not working on leads, you're working on accounts. You have to kind of understand how those accounts are progressing, whether it's engagement, whether it's some other success metric, whether it's the number of meetings booked, whether it's the engagement with the buying committee of that account, or whether it's like, cross-selling opportunities in that account. So measuring ABM by lead or average value of that lead, I think that's a very wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I will record this portion and play it on loop, and I'll put it on LinkedIn so that a lot of people can hear it. So I'll move on. So what I've tried to conjure up something to make this interesting and not bore people out with B2B marketing tactics is, there is one term that I hear quite often. I've tried to put it into quotes and said, B2B marketing, there's nothing called B2B marketing in different styles and forms. There is the same kind of marketing. Eventually you're selling to the same buyer. Everyone is a customer, which is partially true. I don't disagree with it. But the term is B2B marketing is not dead. And why is the question for you? B2B marketing is not dead. Why is B2B marketing not dead? Just differentiate it with other things, whatever comes to your mind.
Oh, so all this time people were considering B2B marketing is dead?
Yeah, I've heard it.
So, I mean, so I don't have the data ready with me, but if people go and Google about just the rise of B2B market in India, the B2B SaaS itself is poised to grow like multi-million dollars or $1 billion market, right? So, as our economy grows, as the buying capacity or the purchasing capacity of people increases, right, then you will have more and more companies setting in. I mean, the B2B SaaS in the last few years has kind of seen a multifold increase in their spending, or the number of companies that have been setting up in India, and the way you market to these companies is very different from B2C. Like, people must be using like Zomato, Swiggy's of the world, and the kind of in-app notifications that you get, it's very specific to B2C. You don't get that in B2B, right? In B2B, it's still very subtle. You have to maintain a relationship. In B2C, there is a customer churning every day in and out. One day you are caught in a controversy, and there will be a hashtag trend on Twitter, boycott this app, right? In B2B, it doesn't happen that way, right? In B2C, there is a different way to handle that stuff. You need to have a strong PR team, right? In B2B, I mean, the way you market to these buyers is very different. And the first time I've heard this phrase like B2B marketing is not dead, which means that people were even considering that it's dead. It's not, right? Ultimately, you cannot market to these set of buyers in the same way that you do for B2C. So B2B marketing is not dead. Why? In a word, I'll just like to kind of think of single word, it's not dead because it's alive and kicking.
That will be a perfect end to this episode. Thank you Aashish for joining in. It was a pleasure, and it was excellent to have you on the first episode and kick ads and tails off for us. Any parting message that you have for the listeners that will come in and eventually grow into a good base for ads and tails, where they can find you on your LinkedIn, follow you back, any questions that you can answer for them?
Yeah, so first thing is great job, Sid. I think I'm sure that in next few quarters, this channel will kind of grow tremendously. So all the best for that. And you can easily, people can easily find me on LinkedIn. I mean, you can just write Aashish Gambhir. So there are very few Aashish Gambhir available on LinkedIn. And I think I'm the only one with double A. So, so I'm very easily searchable on LinkedIn, right? I mean, you can ask me any questions if you have. And plus, if not any questions, at least if you want to discuss anything, I'm happy because I want to learn as much as you want to, right? So I keep listening to all these, podcasts. I keep listening to different interviews because I think, people are doing tremendous things in different pockets of the sector. And there is a lot that we can learn from each other. And I guess this forum will also be right up there where, people can learn about different, marketing strategies and not even marketing. I think sometime Sid might host a live conversation here, like maybe on his 100th episode. Probably I'd like to come back. But
yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
On a parting note, I hope that people enjoyed our conversation. And if there is anything that, you would like to kind of ask me, you can drop me a message on LinkedIn and I'm always available. I'm very active on LinkedIn these days, though I'm not, but I generally remain very active on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you again, Aashish, for doing this. And hopefully we'll have you back again very soon, talking something else till the time you explore something else within the B2B environment, and we'll be talking about that. So thank you again for joining in. And this is Ads and Tales. See you on the next episode.
Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode on Ads and Tales. For more B2B marketing stories, insights, strategies, tactics, and views, keep listening to Ads and Tales. You can also check out the Ads and Tales newsletter to help you crack the code for B2B marketing. And if you need any help in solving any of your B2B marketing problems, check out admomenta.com. This is your host, Sid, signing off. This is Ads and Tales.